Alright, so in this lesson, we're going to be learning a little bit about how to create polygon primitives, which are just basic polygonal shapes, and that's our foundation, our like building blocks for creating literally any model. So, and we're also going to learn how to manipulate them, move them around, and start creating our own models. So, um, let's start off by creating some polygon primitives. You can see by default you'll have your polygons tab open. So what you could do is click one of these buttons and you'll see, boom, I have a polygon cube. But there's also multiple ways of doing almost anything in Maya. So I'm going to show you another way you can do that. You can click this, or you can go to the create menu up here at the top and create, and you'll see that there's multiple types of primitives. We're only going to use polygons. Don't use NURBs. NURBs don't render well. They react differently. They act differently. They're confusing. We're not going to use volume primitives, only polygon primitives. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to click on the cube. So polygon primitive cube. And you'll see now I have a cube, which is great. It's awesome. And it's highlighted in green, which means I have it selected. Um, you'll also notice that in your channel box, it's lit up with all this fantastic information. It says P cube 1 or polygon cube 1. And it also has all this information about it. It has its translate values, which is 0, 0, 0. It has its rotate values, which is also 0, 0, 0. And scale values, which is 1, 1, and 1, because that would be its default shape. This is all of its default locational information. Let me zoom back out. We can check it out. There's visibility as well. And this is all the attributes having to do with this. There's also these inputs that you'll see when you first create it. This is called our history. And if you ever used a graphing calculator and had to write the equations to graph out an image in there, I remember having to do that. It's a similar idea, only Maya does all of that for us and then provides us this interface to edit the original shape. Only when we first create it can we edit these values. You can play around with that, but remember, only when you first create it. If you've done anything new to it or changed it, that will start causing some problems. But you'll see once I deselect it and then select it once again, it's still there, but it kind of gets hidden, so it's no longer there. All right, so now that we see this information in the channel box about our cube, we can actually go about changing some of that and seeing those changes that it may make to this. So if we take a quick look at our axes, we have X, Y, and Z. X is side to side, Y is up and down, and Z is forward and backwards. So if I change translate X, I can type in from 0, let's type in 2. You'll see it actually moves in the positive direction 2 units over. We can have a discussion once we're in class about like the idea of what Maya uses as units, but I'm going to set this back to 0. You can see it jumps back to 0. Same thing with rotation. If I say like rotating from the forward direction is rotate Z, so I'm going to type in 45 degrees in the Z axis for rotation, and you'll see it goes halfway to 90 degrees. If I type in 90, I can do that. I can also just type in twice as big, or 0.5 for scale. I can do that one by one, or you can see I just drag and select them. But either way, you can see you can type in values to change the attributes of this cube. However, that's kind of boring. We like being able to manipulate it with our hands and rotate it exactly how we want and move it exactly how we want. So I'm going to show you guys how we do that. Let's set it back to its default values. All right, it's 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, and 1, 1, 1. And visibility is on, which is good. I wouldn't be able to see it if it wasn't on. So if you look on your keyboard, starting at Q, there's this weird, funny word that spells out QWERTY, or QWERTY. QWERTY is just a keyboard shortcut word that I think is funny. It also has to do with all of our tools for this cube. So if you press Q, actually nothing happens. It's just your selection tool, and it is very useful. We'll see how as we kind of progress, but you'll see if you press W, you'll have your move manipulator. And you'll see sometimes it actually gets in the way of selecting something else, and that's where Q becomes very useful. I like to press Q to get that manipulator out of the way. Let's go back to that W. So press with your object selected, you'll see if I don't have it selected, it won't show up in my channel box, and I also don't see my manipulator. I have to make sure I click on that cube, and now I have that information, and there's my manipulator. Okay, cool. So you'll see I have arrows, these arrows that I can use to move things around. I can grab it from the X direction and move it just, as you can see, it constrains it to just the X axis. It moves only side to side. Z, it'll move only forward and backwards no matter where I move my mouse, and Y, which is up and down. This is much more effective way of a much more effective way of moving something around, as opposed to which some people will start out by doing, which is grabbing it in the center and moving it over here to the right. Now it looks like I moved it just to the right, but I also, if I move my camera, I notice that it's gone a little bit backwards as well. So I wasn't in complete control of where it's moving. If I want to move it directly to the side, just move it to the side. And I encourage you guys to only do it this way. Only move your object by grabbing one of these arrows and constraining it to the axis you want. That way you're being very intentional about where you're moving it. And if you're curious about these squares, this is to move it in two axes at once. Hold off on that for now. Only use the arrows. Move it in one axis at a time. So Q is selection, W is move, E is rotate. You'll see we get these rings that kind of pop up. They're all color coded. So red is always X, green is always Y, blue is always Z. So if I run rotate in the Z axis, I can grab this ring and rotate it, and you'll see it rotates in only the Z axis, only the X axis if I grab the red, and only the Y axis. And you'll see actually right there, I can grab it in the center and rotate it, and this is kind of a free rotate. The issue is I kind of lose track of how I was rotating it. I'm not being in great control. So it's just good etiquette, a good habit to start building up to go in one axis at a time as you're getting familiar with this. So moving along, R is our scale attribute, and you can see this now has these boxes. And if I grab in the center, this one's actually the only one that's okay to grab in the center because we can scale uniformly. If we look over here, see all three of those scales are staying the same. You can also grab and scale in just the Z-axis, make it a little skinnier, or X-axis, or Y-axis, and make it a little taller or shorter. But I like to, a lot of the time I like to scale uniformly, so I'll grab it from the center. But you can see I can change this to be a totally different shape. Maybe this should be a character's arm. And this is actually what we're going to do for our first assignment that I want you guys to start getting familiar with. So I'm going to start building my first model, and I want you guys, once you see me go through this, watch me go through it real quick, and then I want you guys to break off and start making your own model. So I created this cube, and I've scaled it up. I've kind of doubled its size, and I get this totally different shape. And it reminds me of an arm. I'm going to make a little stick figure arm. So I'm going to move this up. Actually, I'm going to make this the body to start off with. I'm going to make a little stick figure guy. So here's his body. And then I'm going to go and I'm going to create another polygon cube. I'll move this up. Maybe scale this in this way. And I can actually look over here and see that my Y is still 1, but my scale X and scale Z is almost 0.5. So I'm just going to specify that I want it to be specifically 0.5. And now I know that it's that big. So I'm going to move it over, grabbing those arrows to make sure it's only moving in the direction I want it to. All right, looks good. Maybe I scale it down a little bit more. I want it to be a little skinnier. And then I'm going to create another cube. Actually, this time, instead of creating a whole new cube, I'm just going to start off with this as a something to begin with. So instead of copy and pasting, Maya actually prefers to just duplicate things. So don't copy and paste. Instead, be sure to duplicate it. So I'm going to grab this leg. I'm going to go Command D. And it will create a duplicate directly on top of it. Now there's two of those exact same objects in the same space. So I need to use my move tool and move it over. If I wanted it to be perfectly mirrored as well, I could actually just look at my translate X value. And since it's positive 0.305, I can just type in negative 0.305 and watch what happens when I press enter. It's exact same spot, just over to the side. Let's go ahead, and I might even use this I'm going to Command D to duplicate. It's in the exact same spot, so I got to remember to move it as soon as it does. Otherwise, it will just sit there occupying the same space, and you won't know that there's multiple there. So it's good to move the object as soon as you duplicate it, just so you can see that it is a separate object. So there's my arm. I'm going to duplicate this, Command D, and remember to switch to my move tool immediately to move it over. I'll even make this just negative 0.766 or whatever it is. And then maybe for the head, I'll just create a sphere. All right. Yay, and there's my dude. So, simple, yes, but this is a great way to start, and this is also going to help you get more familiar with your manipulators, your camera move, the interface. Try going to create polygon primitives, make sure it's polygons. Just a reminder. Or you click these buttons, and just getting familiar with all those controls is plenty for now. Remember, just to stay within your comfort zone for now, and we will progress as we have more time together. You'll also notice as I was moving all that around, I was consistently moving my camera, just shifting it a little bit here, then there, and then here, then there, just to make sure it's the objects are moving where I intend them to move, and they don't end up, like this looks pretty similar, right? Until I start moving my camera, and then I realize, boop, nope, it's all the way over there. Remember, we're working in a 3D space, so we don't want to get all jumbled up. It's much easier to just move your, do maybe 2 clicks. Every 2 clicks, kind of shift your camera just a little bit, just so you're starting to understand it in 3D, in 3 dimensions. And starting that habit early will help you out so much in the long run. So at this point, feel free to, I'm going to go ahead and do the final touches actually first. I'm going to go File, I'm going to go Save Scene, and I'm going to save mine as Stick Figure Guy, and I'll click Save. All right. So I want you guys to take time and try this out yourself. Remember to shift your camera constantly, like every 2 clicks or so. Move your camera around, just so you're starting to understand the 3D space. It's a hard way to think at the beginning, and you'll start to get more comfortable with it if you start doing that. Create a character or a vehicle or a spaceship or any kind of model that you can come up with using these primitives. And feel free to explore as well. Go to Create Polygons. There's more than just a cube and sphere. There's all sorts of fun ones. Like go explore them, check them out, and have some fun. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to send me an email. I'll try and answer it as quickly as possible. But otherwise, I'll see you guys in the classroom pretty soon. All right.